My wife kicked me out after he best friend accused me of hitting on her. 5 months later. All right, Reddit. Buckle up because this one's a doozy. My wife kicked me out of our house because of a lie her best friend told. And by the time the truth finally came out about 3 months later, it was already way too late to save anything. I'm 34 years old. I own an auto restoration shop in Mesa, Arizona, and I thought I had my entire life figured out. Turns out I didn't know anything. Let me take you back to the beginning so this whole thing makes sense. I met Rebecca 7 years ago at a car show in Scottsdale. She wasn't even into cars, just wandered over to my booth because she thought the 1969 Camaro I was displaying looked cool. We started talking, and I fell hard. There's something about a woman who can hold a conversation about something she knows nothing about without pretending to be an expert. She was genuine, funny, and had this smile that made me forget I was supposed to be networking with potential clients. We dated for 2 years. Everything felt right. She was a dental hygienist at a practice in Gilbert, had her own apartment, her own car, her own life. Independent, but not distant. The kind of woman who could take care of herself but still wanted you around. We got married at a small ceremony in Sedona with maybe 40 people total. Her parents cried. My mom definitely cried. Even my dad got a little misty, and that man hadn't shown emotion since the Cardinals lost the Super Bowl. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood in Mesa, about 15 minutes from my shop, and started talking about kids someday. The first 3 years of marriage were solid. We were happy, stable, building something real together. Sunday mornings making breakfast, Wednesday nights watching our shows, Friday date nights at local restaurants we'd been meaning to try. I thought I'd finally found my person. The shop was doing well too. I'd started it 8 years back with nothing but a lease on a rundown warehouse and a whole lot of stubborn determination. Classic car restoration is a niche business, but if you do good work, word spreads. By the time I married Rebecca, I had 3 employees and a 6-month waiting list of clients wanting their vintage vehicles brought back to life. Then Megan moved back to Arizona. Megan was Rebecca's college best friend. They'd been roommates freshman year at ASU and stayed tight even after graduation. Megan had moved to Ohio for some job opportunity about 5 years back, and they'd kept in touch through texts and occasional video calls. When Megan announced she was relocating back to the Phoenix area about 2 years into my marriage, Rebecca was over the moon. I remember her literally jumping up and down in our kitchen when she got the news, spilling coffee everywhere. I tried to be supportive because Rebecca talked about Megan like she was family, like a sister she never had. Said they'd been through everything together in college. The breakups, the bad professors, the financial stress, the late-night study sessions that turned into deep conversations about life. I wanted my wife to be happy, and if reconnecting with her best friend made her happy, then I was all for it. Big mistake. Huge. Megan started coming over constantly. At first it was once or twice a week, which seemed normal. Old friends catching up. Lots to talk about after years of long-distance friendship. But within a few months, she was at our house 3 or 4 times a week, staying for hours at a time. I'd come home from work exhausted after a full day of restoring some client's classic Mustang, covered in grease and mentally drained. And there's Megan on my couch like she pays the mortgage. Rebecca would be next to her, both of them deep in conversation about people I'd never met and situations I had no context for. At first, I made an effort to be friendly. Rebecca's friends are my friends, right? That's how marriage works. I'd ask about her job, about Ohio, about how she was adjusting to being back. Typical small talk stuff. But I noticed things about Megan almost immediately that made me uncomfortable. The way she looked at me was weird, not flirtatious, that I could have handled. This was cold, analyzing, like she was studying me for weaknesses, like a mechanic looking at an engine trying to figure out what's wrong with it. Whenever Rebecca would kiss me or touch my arm in front of her, Megan's expression would darken for just a split second before she'd force a smile. Most people wouldn't catch it, but I'm pretty observant. Comes with the territory of working on cars all day. You notice when something's slightly off, a quarter-inch misalignment, a sound that shouldn't be there, a look that doesn't match the words. She made subtle comments too, little digs disguised as jokes. Things like, must be nice for Rebecca to have someone to take care of her, in this tone that implied I was somehow a burden rather than a partner. She'd tell stories about Rebecca's ex-boyfriends from college, always emphasizing how fun and spontaneous they were compared to boring married life. Every story was designed to make me look bad by comparison, without ever saying anything directly negative. It was skilled manipulation, the kind you don't recognize until you're looking back on it. I mentioned it to Rebecca once, kept it casual, just said that Megan seemed a bit possessive and that some of her comments felt weird, that maybe we should set some boundaries about how often she came over. Rebecca shut me down hard. Told me Megan was just protective because she'd seen Rebecca get hurt before by guys who didn't deserve her. Told me I was being paranoid and reading too much into innocent comments. I dropped it because I didn't want to fight over her best friend. But Megan's behavior only got worse. She started calling Rebecca multiple times every single day. Not texting, calling. Like it was 1998 and unlimited minutes were a precious commodity. She'd show up unannounced at our house at random times. Sunday mornings when Rebecca and I were trying to sleep in. Tuesday evenings when we had dinner plans. Thursday afternoons when I got off work early, hoping to spend quality time with my wife. She'd get visibly upset if Rebecca made plans without including her, and I watched my wife get completely consumed by this friendship. I started feeling like I was losing Rebecca to someone who clearly had some kind of agenda. Megan would text Rebecca at midnight. She'd show up with coffee in the morning without calling first. She'd invite herself to our date nights, and Rebecca would just let it happen, because Megan's been having a hard time adjusting to being back. Or, Megan doesn't have many friends here yet. Always an excuse. Always a justification for behavior that was clearly crossing boundaries. Rebecca started canceling plans with me to hang out with Megan instead. When I brought it up, she accused me of being controlling and jealous of her friendship. I wasn't jealous. I was concerned. Because the way Megan looked at Rebecca wasn't the way someone looks at a friend. It was the way someone looks at a person they're in love with. I started to realize that's exactly what was happening. Megan was in love with my wife, and I was the obstacle standing in her way. But every time I tried to point this out, Rebecca defended Megan and turned it back on me, said I was insecure, said I just didn't understand female friendships, said I was making her feel like she had to choose between her husband and her best friend. The manipulation was so smooth I didn't even fully recognize it at the time. We had installed a Ring doorbell a few months earlier for security after some packages got stolen from our porch, and I started noticing from the notifications just how often Megan was showing up at our house. Sometimes 2 or 3 times a day when I wasn't home. The footage showed her letting herself in with the spare key Rebecca had given her, staying for hours, leaving right before I got home from work. Rebecca and I were also part of a Discord gaming group with some friends, and Megan had joined that too. She was literally in every single part of our lives now. There was no escape from her presence. No corner of my marriage that didn't have her fingerprints all over it. Then came the Tuesday night that destroyed everything I'd built. I had been at the shop late finishing up a restoration project on a client's 1969 Mustang. Beautiful car, cherry red with the original 351 Cleveland engine, but it needed serious work. The transmission was giving us trouble, and I'd promised delivery by the end of the week. I came home around 9, exhausted and ready to collapse on the couch with some leftover pizza and whatever game was on TV. The second I walked in, I knew something was catastrophically wrong. Rebecca was sitting at the kitchen table. Her face was pale. Her eyes were swollen and red like she'd been crying for hours, and when she looked up at me, there was pure disgust in her expression. Not sadness, not confusion. Disgust. Like she was looking at something that had crawled out of a sewer. I asked what was wrong. Genuinely confused. Genuinely concerned. My mind was racing through possibilities. Did someone die? Did she lose her job? Did something happen to her parents? She stood up, her hands shaking with barely contained rage, and told me that Megan had finally revealed what I did. I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. Then she dropped the bomb that would end my marriage. She told me that Megan claimed I had made a move on her, that I had cornered her in our hallway last week when Rebecca was in the bathroom and told her I was attracted to her, that I had touched her arm and asked if she ever thought about us being together, that I had made her feel unsafe in her best friend's house. The accusation hit me like a freight train derailing at full speed. I had never, not once, not even remotely said or done anything like that to Megan. I had actively avoided being alone with her specifically because her behavior made me uncomfortable. The idea that I would hit on my wife's best friend, a woman I didn't even like, was so absurd I almost laughed. Almost. I told Rebecca it was a complete lie. I begged her to think logically about how insane the accusation was. I reminded her that I had expressed concerns about Megan's possessive behavior months ago. I pointed out that Megan had been acting strange since the day she moved back to Arizona. I asked her why she was believing this woman over her husband of 7 years, the man she'd built a life with. She wasn't listening to a single word I said. Rebecca screamed at me, asking why Megan would lie, saying Megan was her best friend with absolutely no reason to make something like this up, claiming that I had always been weird around Megan and that this just confirmed her suspicions, saying Megan had been nervous to tell her, but finally found the courage. I tried everything. I reminded her of every time I'd tried to avoid being alone with Megan. Every conversation where I'd expressed discomfort with her behavior. Every red flag I'd pointed out that Rebecca had dismissed as paranoia. Every single warning I had given her about this woman. Nothing worked. Her mind was completely made up. In that moment, standing in my own kitchen being accused of something I didn't do, I realized that Megan had completely poisoned my wife against me. This had been the plan all along. Every comment, every visit, every late-night phone call had been building toward this exact moment. Rebecca told me to pack a bag and get out of the house immediately. I refused at first. It was my house, too. I had paid the down payment with savings I'd been building since my early 20s. My name was on the mortgage. I had mowed that lawn, fixed that fence, painted those walls. But she threatened to call the police and tell them I made her feel unsafe. Said she'd tell them about my advances toward Megan. The implication was clear. If I didn't leave voluntarily, she'd make sure I left in handcuffs. So I packed some clothes, grabbed my wallet and phone, and walked out of my own home. I sat in my truck in the driveway for 20 minutes, staring at the house I had worked so hard to buy, watching the lights go off one by one as Rebecca prepared for bed. The reality of what just happened started sinking in like a weight on my chest, like someone had parked a car on top of me and walked away. My wife had believed a lie from her best friend over 7 years of marriage and partnership. She had chosen Megan over me without even questioning the story or asking for my side, without evidence, without hesitation, without a single moment of doubt. And the worst part was, I knew exactly what Megan was doing. She wanted Rebecca for herself. She had been slowly isolating her from me for months, building distrust, planting seeds of doubt. And this accusation was the final move to push me out completely. I drove to my buddy Brett's apartment and crashed on his couch that night. Brett and I had been friends since high school. He was the guy who helped me rebuild my first engine in his parents' garage when we were 17. The kind of friend who shows up when you call, no questions asked. I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept replaying the conversation, trying to figure out where I went wrong, how I could have prevented this, what I could have said differently. But the truth was, there was nothing I could have done. Megan had planned this. She had fabricated a story designed specifically to destroy my marriage, and Rebecca had believed her without hesitation. My life had collapsed in less than 24 hours, and I had no idea how I was going to prove my innocence or get my wife back. I spent the first week at Brett's apartment in complete shock, sleeping maybe 2 hours a night, barely eating, just replaying everything in my head, trying to make sense of how my life had fallen apart so fast. Brett was a good friend, the kind of friend who doesn't ask questions when you show up at his door at 10 p.m. with a duffel bag and a look on your face like someone just died. He let me crash without pressing for details at first, just handed me a pillow and a blanket and said the couch was mine for as long as I needed it. But eventually I told him everything, and he was the only person who believed me from the start. Said he'd always thought Megan was weird. Said the way she looked at Rebecca at our last barbecue gave him creepy vibes. Having someone believe me felt like a lifeline when I was drowning. The reason Rebecca believed Megan so easily was something I didn't fully understand until later. But looking back, I could see how Megan had been planting seeds for months. She had been making comments to Rebecca about how I looked at other women, how I seemed distant lately, how marriage changes men and makes them look for excitement elsewhere. Rebecca later told me that Megan had been sharing articles about infidelity and emotional affairs, casually bringing up stories about friends whose husbands had cheated, all while pretending to be concerned about Rebecca's happiness. Megan had been grooming Rebecca to distrust me long before she made the accusation, so when she finally dropped the bomb, Rebecca's mind was already primed to believe it. The manipulation had been so gradual and subtle that Rebecca didn't even realize it was happening. She thought she was drawing her own conclusions when really Megan had been guiding her there for months. Rebecca tried to contact me exactly once, 3 days after she kicked me out. She sent a single text message asking if I had anything to say for myself, if I wanted to come clean and apologize. I responded immediately, telling her again that I had done nothing wrong, that Megan was lying, that I needed her to actually listen to me and think critically about the situation. I asked her to look at the evidence. I had no text with Megan, no calls, no secret meetings, nothing that would indicate any kind of inappropriate relationship. She replied saying she had thought about it and that Megan had no reason to lie while I had every reason to deny it. Said she needed space. Said she didn't want me contacting her anymore. That was it. That was the only attempt at communication. After that, she completely cut me off, blocked my number, blocked me on all social media, refused to respond to any messages I sent through mutual friends. It was like 7 years of marriage meant absolutely nothing. Like I was a stranger she wanted erased from her life. Meanwhile, Megan had essentially moved into my house. I heard from a neighbor, old guy named Frank, who had lived on that street for 30 years, that her car was there every single day, that she was staying overnight constantly, that she and Rebecca were inseparable. Frank actually thought Megan was Rebecca's sister, who had moved in to help her through the separation. But I knew exactly what was happening. Megan had gotten what she wanted. She had pushed me out and now had Rebecca all to herself. I was living out of a duffel bag on Brett's couch, unable to go back to my own home, unable to talk to my own wife, watching my entire life get stolen by someone who had orchestrated this whole nightmare from day one. I knew I needed to prove my innocence somehow. So I started gathering evidence, became my own detective because nobody else was going to do it for me. The process was methodical. Same approach I take when diagnosing a problem with a classic car. Start with what you know, document everything, and follow the evidence wherever it leads. I created a spreadsheet tracking every interaction I could remember having with Megan. Dates, times, witnesses present, what was said. Sounds obsessive, but when someone's trying to destroy your life with lies, obsessive documentation becomes survival. I went through every single message, email, and interaction I had ever had with Megan, which wasn't much because I had deliberately kept my distance from her. I pulled up the Discord chat history from that gaming group we were all in, completely professional and minimal. Nothing that could even remotely be interpreted as flirtatious. Just game coordination and occasional group jokes. My messages to her could be counted on one hand. I checked my phone records. 0 calls or texts between me and Megan outside of group messages. Not a single one-on-one communication in nearly 2 years. Nothing private, nothing hidden, nothing suspicious. I requested the video footage from our Ring doorbell and reviewed every single time Megan had been at our house. Hours of footage. And you could see clear as day that I avoided her, that I would leave rooms when she entered, that I never engaged with her one-on-one. Every interaction was brief, polite, and in Rebecca's presence. I gathered bank statements showing I had never taken Megan out, never bought her anything, never had any suspicious purchases that would indicate an affair or even an interest in one. No secret credit card charges, no unexplained expenses, nothing. I compiled everything into a folder and took it to a lawyer. The lawyer's name was Nathan, and he was recommended by Brett's brother, who had gone through a messy divorce a few years back. Nathan had a reputation for being thorough and honest, even when the honesty hurt. He looked through everything I brought him and told me straight up that I had a solid case, that the evidence clearly showed no inappropriate relationship with Megan, not even close. The documentation was overwhelming in my favor, but then he hit me with the reality check that changed everything. He explained that it might not matter in the divorce proceedings because Arizona is a no-fault state. Even if I could prove Rebecca's accusations were false, the marriage was still over if she wanted it to be, and fighting it would just cost me more money and time while dragging out the inevitable. Nathan advised me to file for divorce myself, to get ahead of it and control the narrative, to document everything in case Megan tried to escalate her lies further. He said the best revenge was protecting my assets and my reputation with cold, hard evidence. So that's what I did. 2 weeks into this nightmare, I filed for divorce citing irreconcilable differences. Had the papers served to Rebecca at the house, the same house I had bought for us, the same house where I was no longer welcome. The entire time this was happening, Rebecca's family and all our mutual friends were being told that I had made advances toward Megan, that I was a creep who had betrayed my wife's trust. The narrative was spreading like wildfire through our entire social circle. Rebecca's mom called me once to tell me I was disgusting, and that she had always known there was something off about me. This woman had hugged me at holidays, had called me her son, had texted me recipes she thought I'd like, had thanked me for taking such good care of her daughter. Now she was talking to me like I was a stranger who had violated her daughter. Rebecca's sister posted vague things on social media about men who disrespect their wives and how women should always believe other women, clearly about me without naming me directly. The comments were full of supportive friends agreeing with her, adding their own stories about terrible men they had known. Our friend group completely froze me out. Nobody reached out. Nobody asked for my side of the story. They just accepted Megan's version as fact because she was crying to everyone about how uncomfortable I had made her, about how brave she was for finally telling Rebecca the truth, about how hard it was to watch her best friend be married to someone like me. I lost my wife, my home, my reputation, and my entire social circle in a matter of days, all because of one calculated lie from someone who wanted what I had. I threw myself into work because it was the only thing I had left. I was at the shop 12 to 14 hours a day, taking on extra projects, staying late to avoid going back to Brett's couch, just trying to keep my mind occupied so I wouldn't spiral into complete despair. My employees knew something was wrong, but I didn't tell them the details. Just said I was going through a separation and left it at that. They gave me space, picked up the slack when I needed it, and didn't ask questions. Good people who respected boundaries. The only thing that kept me sane was knowing I had the truth on my side, that eventually somehow the real story would come out, that Megan's lies would unravel. But as weeks turned into months, I started losing hope that it ever would. Some lies just stick. Some reputations never recover. Some marriages end without justice. Then, about 3 months after Rebecca kicked me out, I got a phone call that changed everything. It was Rebecca's mom, the same woman who had called me disgusting and cut me off completely, and her voice was shaking when she spoke. She said she needed to tell me something, that something had happened, that I needed to know the truth. My heart was pounding because I had no idea what was coming. Part of me expected more accusations, more lies, more attacks on my character. But that's not what happened. She told me that Megan had confessed everything. Apparently, Megan had been at Rebecca's place 2 nights before, just the two of them, like usual. But something had shifted. They'd gotten into an argument about something minor, and it had escalated. Emotions running high, old tensions surfacing. Words said that couldn't be taken back. And in the middle of this emotional breakdown, Megan started talking, started admitting things she had kept buried. She told Rebecca's mom that she had always been in love with Rebecca since their freshman year of college, that she had moved back to Arizona specifically to be close to her, that she couldn't stand watching Rebecca be married to me, that every time she saw us together, it felt like a knife in her chest. She admitted she had made up the entire story about me making a move on her, the whole thing. Every detail fabricated from nothing. She even confessed that she had created fake screenshots of text messages to show Rebecca as proof, that she had spent weeks planning exactly what to say and how to say it to make the accusation believable, rehearsed it like a script. Her whole goal from the beginning was to destroy the marriage so Rebecca would be hers. She thought that if she could just get me out of the picture, Rebecca would eventually see that they were meant to be together, that she would realize Megan was the one who truly understood her, the one who truly loved her. It was delusional, completely and utterly delusional. But it had worked. Rebecca's mom said she immediately told Rebecca everything, and Rebecca had confronted Megan the next morning. Megan tried to backtrack at first, tried to say she was just emotional and talking nonsense, that she didn't mean any of it, that Rebecca should just forget what she heard. But eventually she broke down and admitted it was all true. She confessed she had been manipulating Rebecca for months, planting doubts about me, isolating her emotionally, building distrust brick by brick until the foundation of our marriage was ready to collapse, and then finally fabricating the accusation that would push me out for good. Rebecca's mom was crying on the phone, apologizing to me over and over, saying she should have questioned the story more, that she should have given me a chance to defend myself, that she was so sorry for what she said to me and how she treated me. She told me Rebecca knew the truth now, that she was completely devastated, that she hadn't stopped crying since Megan's confession. But I didn't feel satisfaction hearing any of it. I just felt empty, because 3 months of being called a liar couldn't be undone by an apology. 3 months of sleeping on my friend's couch. 3 months of losing my home, my reputation, my entire social circle. 3 months of being treated like a monster for something I didn't do. The damage had been done, and it was irreversible. Rebecca's mom said Rebecca wanted to talk to me, that she wanted to explain and apologize, that she was desperate to make things right. I told her I wasn't ready, that I needed time to process everything that had just happened. I hung up the phone and sat in my truck outside the shop, and for the first time in 3 months, I actually felt something besides anger and despair. But it wasn't relief. It was grief, for the marriage that was already dead, for the wife who had chosen to believe a lie over me, for the life I thought I was building, that had been stolen by someone else's obsession. Nathan called me the day after Rebecca's mom reached out, told me that Rebecca had contacted him directly, asking if we could meet to talk about everything. Nathan advised me to agree to the meeting, but to keep it formal, have him present. Don't let emotions dictate any decisions. He scheduled it for the following Saturday at the house, which felt appropriate since that's where everything had fallen apart. I drove there with Nathan, and walking up to my own front door felt surreal, like I was entering a place that used to be mine but now belonged to a stranger. A ghost of the life I used to have, Rebecca answered. And she looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were swollen and red. Her face was pale. She could barely look at me without tearing up. Part of me wanted to reach out and comfort her. Old habits die hard, but I stayed where I was. Nathan and I walked in and sat down in the living room. Same couch where Rebecca and Megan used to spend hours together. Same coffee table where we used to eat takeout on movie nights. Everything looked the same but felt completely different. That's when I noticed Megan was there too, sitting on the couch like she had every right to be part of this conversation. The audacity was almost impressive. Nathan immediately told Megan she needed to leave, that this was a private meeting between me and Rebecca, and that her presence was completely inappropriate. Megan stood up reluctantly, gathering her bag, and as she walked past me toward the door, she leaned in close and whispered something I'll never forget. She told me I had ruined everything. The way she said it, with so much venom and genuine belief that I was somehow the villain in all of this, made me realize just how delusional and dangerous she actually was. She had destroyed my marriage, fabricated lies that ruined my reputation, and she still thought she was the victim. But what she didn't realize was that Rebecca heard her. Rebecca was standing right there and heard Megan blame me for ruining the life that Megan herself had destroyed with her lies. Something clicked in Rebecca's mind in that moment. You could see it on her face, like the last piece of the puzzle finally fell into place. Rebecca turned to Megan right there in the hallway and told her to get out, to never contact her again. Her voice was shaking but firm. Megan's face went from smug to panicked in seconds. She started backtracking, said she didn't mean it like that, tried to grab Rebecca's hand and explain, but Rebecca pulled away and told her she was done, that she finally saw Megan for who she really was, that she never wanted to see her again. Megan completely broke down. She started crying hysterically, admitting through sobs that she had loved Rebecca since college, that she had wanted her for years, that she thought if she could just get me out of the picture, Rebecca would finally see they were meant to be together. She was saying all of this out loud, confessing everything, and it was honestly disturbing to watch someone unravel like that. All the careful manipulation and calculated lies just melting away into raw, pathetic desperation. Nathan physically escorted Megan to the door and told her to leave or he would call the police. She finally left, still sobbing, getting into her car and driving away. The house was silent after that. Just me, Rebecca, and Nathan, sitting in the living room that used to be ours. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Rebecca tried to talk. She tried to apologize. She told me she knew she had made a terrible mistake, that she should have believed me, that she should have seen through Megan's manipulation. She was crying. Her hands were shaking. She kept saying she was sorry over and over, begging me to give her a chance to make it right. But I felt nothing. I sat there listening to her apologies and explanation, and all I could think about was how easily she had thrown away 7 years, how quickly she had believed the worst about me, how she had chosen Megan over me without a second thought. Nathan pulled out the divorce papers from his briefcase and set them on the coffee table in front of us. Rebecca looked at them like they were a death sentence. Her face went white. She begged me not to do this, asked me to give her a chance to prove she still loved me, said we could rebuild what we had, that she would spend the rest of her life making it up to me. But I was done. I picked up the pen and signed the papers right there on the coffee table, without saying a word. Rebecca completely fell apart. She dropped to her knees in front of me, begging me to reconsider, telling me she would do anything, that she would cut off everyone who had doubted me, that she would move away from Arizona if that's what it took. I looked at her and told her the only thing I had left to say. I told her she had believed everyone except me, the person who had stood by her for 7 years, the person who had built a life with her, the person who had never given her any reason to doubt me. And I told her I would never forgive her for that. Trust was the foundation of everything we had, and she had destroyed it beyond repair. Not Megan, her, by choosing to believe a lie over the truth without evidence, without hesitation, without giving me even a moment to defend myself. Nathan and I stood up. He collected the signed papers, and we walked out of that house for the last time. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. I threw myself into rebuilding, bought the commercial unit next door to my shop, and knocked out the wall between them. Hired 2 more employees. Installed a dedicated paint booth and added room for 2 more lifts. Started taking on concourse-level restorations for collectors who wanted perfection and were willing to pay for it. Revenue went up 40% in 6 months. I finished the 1970 Challenger I had been working on for myself. Deep purple metallic paint, white racing stripes, numbers matching 4406 pack under the hood. Entered it in the Scottsdale Classic Car Show that October, and took 2nd place in my class. 1st place went to some retired surgeon with a restored Hemi Cuda that probably cost more than my house. That's where I met Nicole. She was walking through the show with her brother, who was looking at a 1967 Corvette 2 rows over. She stopped at my booth, asked about the restoration process, intelligent questions about original specifications versus modification, not pretending to be interested, actually curious. We talked for an hour. I got her number, called her the next day. Our first date was at a steakhouse in Scottsdale. Second date was a drive through the desert in the Challenger with the windows down. Third date, she came to the shop and helped me disassemble a carburetor while I explained how each piece worked. She showed up in clothes she didn't mind getting dirty. That's when I knew she was different. Nicole knew my whole story from the beginning. I told her everything on our 4th date because I wasn't about to build another relationship on anything less than total honesty. She listened, asked a few questions, and then said she was sorry that happened to me. That was it. No drama, no insecurity, no constant need for reassurance. We moved in together 8 months later. She sold her condo in Tempe, and we found a place in Gilbert with a 3-car garage. She travels for work sometimes, selling commercial properties across the Southwest. When she's gone, I don't worry. When I work late at the shop, she doesn't interrogate me. We trust each other. Wild concept. Meanwhile, the fallout from Megan's confession hit everyone involved. Our mutual friends found out the truth about what happened. Jake and his wife Lisa, who had completely frozen me out, showed up at the shop one day to apologize in person, said they felt terrible for believing the rumors. I told them I appreciated it, but things were different now. Couldn't pretend those 3 months of silence didn't happen. Rebecca's family took it hard. Her mom ran into me at a grocery store about 4 months after the divorce was finalized. She started crying right there in the produce section, apologized for calling me disgusting, said she'd never forgive herself for how she treated me. I told her it was fine and got out of there as fast as I could. Rebecca ended up selling the house, couldn't afford the mortgage on her salary alone. She moved into a one-bedroom apartment across town. Her sister told Brett's girlfriend that Rebecca had been diagnosed with depression and was on medication, that she blamed herself for everything and couldn't stop replaying how it all went wrong. Megan fled back to Ohio within 2 weeks of her confession. The story spread through our entire social circle, and she couldn't show her face anywhere without someone knowing what she'd done. Last I heard from someone who knew her family, she was living with her parents in Columbus and working at a grocery store. The woman who had orchestrated the destruction of my marriage ended up right back where she started, with nothing to show for it. Rebecca texted me about 6 months after the divorce was finalized, said she knew she had no right to reach out, but she needed me to know she was sorry, that she thought about what she did every single day, that she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again, but she hoped someday I could forgive her. I read the message, didn't respond. She texted again 3 months later, then again around Christmas, then on what would have been our anniversary. Each message got a little more desperate, a little more pathetic. She asked if we could meet for coffee, asked if there was any chance of reconciliation, asked if I had found someone else. I never responded to any of them. Then, about 2 months ago, I ran into her at a gas station. She was filling up at the pump across from mine. Looked like she'd lost about 15 pounds and not in a healthy way. Her hair was longer and not as well maintained as it used to be. She saw me and her whole face changed, started walking toward me. I finished pumping my gas, got in my truck, and drove away before she could reach me. Watched her standing there in my rearview mirror, frozen in the middle of the parking lot. Nicole asked about it when I got home. I told her what happened. She nodded and said she was sorry I had to deal with that. Then she asked what I wanted for dinner. That's the difference. That's what I have now versus what I had before. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks. Stories. Thanks.